Thank you for joining us. In our first story, NADMO is yet to support flood victims at Ajafusepasi in the Ashanti region, almost 3 days after the incident. The National Disaster Management Organization, we understand yesterday, was in that region, in that particular area, to do some assessment where many of the residents there are forced to look for alternative places to lay their heads as their houses are submerged. It follows torrential rains from Tuesday night into yesterday, which led to a nearby stream overflowing its banks. People could not move in and out for work, which meant school children were unable to go to school. Ohiminteria has the rest of the story.
No casualty was recorded, but NADMO officials in the Achimwangweja district have begun assessing the extent and cause of damage to property. River Jahe overflowed its bank and washed away the only road leading to the community.
Because of the floods, my mother was afraid to send me to school. I am worried I couldn't go to school today, but I will go tomorrow. A lot of children couldn't go to school today.
Residents blame absence of bridge over the stream for the perennial floods. They say small covers constructed on Sepasi Ejafu Road are too small to absorb the volume of water when it rains. Repeated attempts to get the Achimwangweja District Assembly to fix the bridge have fallen on deaf ears. Jimmy Douglas Donko is a resident.
But we have a road leading to the community, and unfortunately it is not bridge, but we have some small covers on it. So anytime it rains heavily uphill, the water floats, and then with the volume overpowers the covers to the extent that it covers the whole span. And mostly when it happens like that, the small kids, the smaller ones who cannot cross by walking through the water, left home and they don't go to school. It's so overwhelming to the extent that, in fact, the very few cars that live around, especially the 4x4 cars, they presume that they could cross with the cars. But unfortunately, about 3 of them that went through the Edison had their engines went off. And when it happens like that, you have nothing to do but to stay home. We went to the district chief executive some time back, and he promised coming to do some excavation of the river. But that never came on until yesterday. And even yesterday, we were with him. He said he was going to discuss the problem with the engineer as to whether they were able to discuss or not.
At least 3 vehicles, including a Toyota minibus whose driver attempted to pass through the flood water, had their engines damaged.
And that was Ohiminteria's report. He joins us live on the line with the latest from the community. Hello, Ohimin. What is the situation now?
Yes, Beatrice, for now, school children who were not able to go to school yesterday, today have the opportunity to go back to school. And also the adults who could also not go yesterday also have the similar opportunity to go back to their duties today. But as we speak now, the water has subsided and it's left for residents who are still counting their losses after their homes were taken over by the flood waters. But as we speak now, normal duties in the community. But the unfortunate thing is that the NADMO and the District Assembly is yet to come to the aid of people who probably lost their property in the flood victory.
All right, thank you very much, Inshira FM's Ohiminteria, for bringing us the latest from that community where a number of people have been displaced as a result of flooding. We can now get some answers and speak to the district NADMO coordinator for the area there, Ose Kwabena. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Right, so we don't have him now. We'll try and get in touch with him and bring you those answers. Now, let's move on to other stories. On the second Thursday of October is set aside globally to focus attention on blindness and vision impairment. Not everyone is born blind or genetically predisposed to visual impairment. However, attitudes, habits, and accidents can lead to visual impairment. What are those everyday things we do that could be hurting our eyes without our knowledge? Acting head of the eye care unit at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. James Amo-Adi, shared some thoughts on this issue on the AM show.
Let me even start it more like our lifestyle. Let me even start from even pregnancy.
Okay.
Even in pregnancy, when mothers are pregnant, there are certain kind of infections that when they should get those infections, it can lead to blindness and visual impairment. And then during delivery, if you don't deliver maybe in the hospitals, you deliver at home, it can also cause predispose the children to blindness and visual impairment. Whilst we are growing up as children, the way we play around with sharp objects, sticks, and pointed pencils, pens, that can also expose us to blindness and visual impairment. And of course, when we grow up, our lifestyle, sedentary work, the kind of food we eat, lack of exercise, all those things can predispose us to systemic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and all those things will end up giving us eye problems. So yes, our lifestyle, even from pregnancy, all the way through delivery, through childhood, and then of course in adulthood. But there are certain blindness or visual impairment which is age-related that we can't do much about it. But we shouldn't go blind from those conditions. People also believe that once you have a disease, once you are growing up, it's like divine that you should have some bit of visual impairment, and therefore there are a lot of people who have eye problems, but then they still think that they don't need to go to the hospital. People even need just common spectacles, but they have the belief that if they wear the spectacles rather will end up worsening their sight. So even if you give it to their children, they prevent their children from wearing it. Even for they themselves, they don't want to wear it. And of course, then they go on with the visual impairment. Others come from money. The money is not there. I mean, now we are happy that the health insurance is providing some basic drugs for everyone, but then there are other potent drugs that people need, but because they don't have the money to buy those drugs, then of course they will stay at home. Some of the eye diseases are chronic. That means that we cannot cure it. We can only control it. So for how long are you going to buy drugs, maybe very expensive drugs, and continue for the rest of your life? Lifestyle. I mean, once you sit behind a computer, you shouldn't sit there for hours and hours and hours. I mean, you can work on a computer 30 minutes, 1 hour. And I'm glad that this station or the radio stations, I mean, they work for a while, then they go for a break. You understand? So I will advise that he works on a computer maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes. He gets up, walks around. The more you move your eyes from one position and you keep looking forward and backwards, you activate the eye. And therefore, I would advise that as for he himself, he should start working on the computer 30 minutes to 1 hour, gets up, walk around for a while, and then comes back. Secondly, the computers have levels of illumination. His illumination should not be too high, and otherwise then the heat from the radiation can also dry the eye. And then even if he's not getting up to walk around, he should consciously blink so that the eye will be wet and therefore do not give him that kind of problem. So those are some of the few things that I'll tell him to do. We also have anti-reflectors for computers. If he can't afford and can get the anti-reflectors on the computers, that would be good. I know that these days the computers that are coming are low radiated computer screens and things like that. But if he can protect himself by the lifestyle, blinking often, getting up and walking around, getting the appropriate spectacles with an anti-reflector, getting the screen illumination very good, all these things will help him whilst he continues to enjoy his computer.
Quite some good education there, but here is a report to give more insight into today's activity.
Theresa Kwatima alleges she was confined for years by her own mother and other relatives who even attempted to poison her. They refused to buy drugs prescribed for her whenever she fell sick. Her crime is that she had been blind a condition her relatives found her embarrassing due to public ridicule. Theresa's grandmother and only solace saw her through school up to second cycle level. The old lady was, however, too weak to be able to continue providing for her personal and educational needs. After completing senior high school at the Kropon School for the Blind, Theresa was back home in hopelessness. Her schoolmate, who had trained as a teacher, gave her some money to resit some papers she had failed in the West Africa Senior Certificate exams. Theresa finally made a grade and got admission at Wesley College of Education, but how to raise money to pay fees was yet another stumbling block. An appeal saw volunteers contributing 3,000 Ghana cedis to put her back to school. Theresa is among 10 visually impaired students admitted to study social education at Wesley College this academic year.
It is a official plan for talk at Arema.
Head of the visually impaired unit at Wesco, Bid the Venerable Bugase, finds it unfair for physically challenged students to pay the same fees as their able-bodied colleagues. He wants the Ghana Blind Association to intensify advocacy on issues affecting its members.
The biggest challenges are the payment of fees. Like they are with their colleagues here, the disability at least, they do not do certain subjects. They don't bring their textbooks in Braille. They don't, it's just the normal this thing that courses that they go through. And they are expected to pay like their sighted colleagues. That is our biggest challenge, because at least they should have been exempted from paying the same amount of fees as their colleagues. So I think the Special Education Department, the Ghana Blind Union should come together and fight that cause. So do you see things that they shouldn't be doing that they are expected to do? Looking at the fees especially. The sighted colleagues, they take exercise books, they take a whole lot of things. When they pay and you give me, as a visually impaired person, you give me an exercise book, how do I benefit from it? You see, so at least we think that these things should be looked at, and then they streamline things, and we're able to work very well.
Mr. Bugasi also recommends education authorities to provide software to facilitate completion of online admission by visually impaired persons.
Yeah, the admissions, when it comes to admissions, for example, because they are exempted from maths and science, when they fill the online, automatically they are not qualified. You see, so Accra online goes to teacher education, and they will now have to sit down and select those who are qualified. But in our situation, it would have been better that they have a software for the visually impaired. Because on the form, there is a disability column where they will now have to enter this information, and then at least they will be admitted. I will now have to sit down and select forms and present to the principal for admission. So this is a very big challenge, because if not for that, that means we don't have had any visually impaired student this year. You see, unfortunately, we had a new principal who is very listening.
And some news, Justin, we are learning that there is fire outbreak at City House here in Accra. I'm joined on the line now by Godfred Bokwin Jr. He's an eyewitness on the ground. Hello, Godfred. If you can hear me, describe to us what you can see. Hello, Godfred.
Yes, hello.
Great. So I can hear the siren, I suppose, of the fire tenders around. If you can hear me, describe to us what you can see at the scene.
Yes, I was actually coming from the ministries when I saw people trooping out of their offices at the building of the City House. So I tried to look around a little, and I saw the fire outbreak on top, let me say, at the first floor of City House. the back of City House that faces the total building. There is this smoke coming from the top, and everybody has actually come out. The challenge right now is that they have the fire service around, the police have also come around, but the fire service is finding it difficult getting to the top. You can imagine the size of the City House building. They are now finding it difficult getting to the top to be able to quench the fire. And so they are just, what I can see, that is error. They are standing down and splashing the water upwards, trying to see if it can quench the fire, but the smoke rather keeps increasing from now on. But for now, as I'm talking to you, everybody is out of their offices. Everybody is standing outside on the gathering court of the City House, and they are trying. The fire service are also trying their best. Some are trying to climb, go to see if they can get the tube there to be able to quench the fire.
Godfred,
so
I want to understand you clearly. I want to understand you clearly. If I heard what you said from the beginning, yes. You said that you saw a smoke from the first floor. Now you're talking about the fire service struggling to go to the top. Tell us, where exactly do you see the fire at?
The fire at the first floor. You know, the City House, the height of the City House has a balcony. It has a space behind it, like a balcony, which faces the total house. That fire is.
All right.
And that is where the fire service is finding it difficult to be able to get to, so they can quench the fire there.
All right, we'll end it here and we'll bring you more later in as we go on. But the news is that there is a fire outbreak at City House here in Accra, and the fire service, they are struggling to try to put out the fire because of how the situation is like there now. But we'll bring you more as and when we get the latest on this.